Yeah, I mean, when you say to me that you were really moved, you don't know why, for me I've done my job. Because I think that it's very difficult as human beings to change. But I think if one goes through some kind of an emotion, even if you can't explain what it is, I think you change. I think a certain kind of change takes place. A kind of a reflection helps you to go into another space, and this is very important for me.
It's like a journey.
It's totally a journey. I mean, well, life's a journey, but it is really very much about moving. I see it as somebody transporting your emotions to another place. So you take your bag, it's in one place, and you move it to another place. And because you're in another place, you experience that experience of moving, and the new environment pushes you to grow in another direction. So it's good. It is a stage, and the artist or the performer has his back to the audience, like most leaders in this world. They are very visual, but their back is always, they really never really face their public. They do, geographically they turn and they talk to them, but they don't really. So it's about Albert letting, not turning to answer to the audience, but to let the audience in on him. Even though his back is to them, they can see his front. So it's I'm playing with space basically, and he starts cut off, but he's letting people in. I mean, Albert's an amazing performer, but I think he has something else that is quite difficult to identify, and I think it has to do with the fact that he is a healer. So I think he touches the subconscious. His performance touches the subconscious a lot of the public. In the beginning, I tried to understand it, and then I just let it go, and I just let it be, and I let it just wander and do the work. He's a professional actor. He's a dancer. For me, he's a professional performer, and he's for me the next generation, the new generation of South Africans. Who really are open and want to understand who they are, where they came from, where they're going. So he's really interested in who he is, where he comes from, and where he's going. And I like this interrogation.
And it's the way you work always with your dancer and the people you work with.
Yeah.
You ask them to work with you, and you work with them. That's always an exchange.
Yeah. And a lot of the time I walk into rehearsal and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I start talking with the people I'm working with, and something comes out. And with that, we go on a journey. And it's not always very easy. I don't think it was very easy for Albert, and it's not easy for me, definitely. But I know that it's not easy, and I accept, and I know what I'm letting myself in for. I think a lot of people want to work with me. A lot of artists would like to work with me, but they don't realize how hard it is for me to make a work, because they are the work. And the artist is the work, and I think it's difficult. I don't think it's easy.
At the beginning of this piece, you wanted to do something else, and the meeting with Albert and the work with him made you change a little bit.
Yeah. I wanted to work along issues of corrective rape, which is something that happens a lot in South Africa, mainly amongst lesbians, where lesbians are raped and then murdered because they're lesbian. But I realized that Albert's not lesbian, and I mean, we work with gender stuff all the time. I work with gender stuff all the time. So I wanted to come back to who Albert was. So I started working more with where the world is at the moment, with leaders, how leaders are dealing with or not dealing with themselves, and what's happening around them. And basically, I think, where has humanity gone? That's the big question in this piece.
You define yourself not really as an artist, you're a choreographer, you're an artist, but you say I'm a social and cultural worker.
Yeah, it's something from the past, from my years in the struggle in South Africa. We didn't see ourselves as artists. We chose not to see ourselves as artists. We chose to see ourselves as cultural workers and try not to be elitist, and look down upon people and bourgeois, and I still try to work like that.
But it's a real struggle.
Yeah.
Always.
Always.
And what's beautiful in this piece, the struggle brings to something which is a human being in front of us.
Yeah.
And I think
layers of human being. Yeah, a person who tries to deal with his anger, with his emotions.
Fragility, deliria, imagination, poetry, politic,
history, both cultural and political and personal.
How do you feel now in this world? Someone asked you a few hours ago about young democracy. And you told, you feel like young democracy too.
Well, you know, in one of my pieces, one of my earlier pieces, my performer Gerard Beste says we do something very violent on the stage, and we apologize because we're a young democracy. And somebody earlier asked me, you know, do you still think you're a young democracy? And it was an interesting question, because I didn't know if he was talking about South Africa or about me. And actually both, I think we're both still very young democracies. I mean, apartheid has only just been dismantled. If I look at Europe's gone through many big wars. I think that's not to say South Africa hasn't gone through big wars, we have. But being democratic is a very new experience for us. And I think we're struggling with it, and I think it's not easy to be a democratic being. Democracy is not easy.
You're a citizen of the world. You traveled a lot, and you're still traveling a lot.
Yeah.
But you have a strong attachment to South Africa, even if you live now in Berlin, and if you travel a lot around the world.
Yeah. I will always feel a connection with South Africa. I won't forget where I come from, and what I've been through has informed me, even though I'm only a first-generation South African.
And the piece talks about this also.
Totally, yeah. Talks about what it is to be a person now, you know, what it is to be a person in the world, and the kinds of things we need to think about all the time. and be aware of.